This is not anymore about the 7 men and women of World Central Kitchen that perished on this unfortunate event. This is happening for too long. It's been 6 months of targeting anything that seems moves. This doesn't seem a war against terror. This doesn't seem anymore a war about defending Israel. This really, at this point, seems is a war against humanity itself.
Okay, that is a lie, and it's a disgusting lie.
On today's episode of Ben Shapiro Show, he ranted at length about the international response to the IDF and its military operations, including the 3 separate drone strikes the IDF carried out that led to the killing of 7 World Central Kitchen workers. Now, interestingly enough, Ben Shapiro feels that Chef Jose Andres is a radical here for what he had to say during a sit-down interview with ABC News over the weekend. Keep in mind that he's discussing his colleagues, people that he knew personally, getting killed by the IDF, even though they had coordinated their exact location with the IDF. Even though the IDF knew exactly where they were, even though there was no indication that there was anything wrong with what they were doing, everything was above board. But they were killed in 3 separate drone strikes anyway. Important to know that context before we get to more of what he had to say. But before we do, Cenk, what is it with Ben? Is it just this intense bias that he has?
Oh, 100%.
So biased that he's unable to see straight in regard to what the IDF has done and what the Israeli government has even taken responsibility for.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you. So I'll agree with him about one thing that he said about Jose Andres a little bit later as we go through the story. But to your main question, Anna, 45,000 buildings destroyed in Khan Yunis alone. That's just one city in Gaza. 55% of the buildings there, the human rights groups are calling it unlivable city. And Ben Shapiro wants you to believe that all of that was just targeting terrorists, destroying 55% of the buildings in a city just to target militants. Okay, I mean, you could believe that if you're the most gullible person, and I'm being polite here, in the world, but no one else on planet Earth believes that. They're obviously leveling the place and destroying Gaza on purpose. And Ben can do all he wants, and why is he doing it? Obviously, massive, out of control bias.
Now, Shapiro took particular issue with Andres referring to Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza, to be quite frank, as a war against humanity. Let's listen to how Shapiro responded and reacted to that.
So Chef Jose Andres is the head of the World Central Kitchen when he is not doing his chefing. The World Central Kitchen does a lot of good work in bringing food into very hard-hit areas in terms of war. Also, he is a political radical. He's been a political radical for quite a while. Those 2 things are not in particular contradiction. You can do good things and you can do bad things. Life is filled with these sorts of things. He went on national TV and he suggested that what Israel is doing is a war against humanity itself, which is an incredibly vicious proposition. It is not true that Israel is in a war with quote unquote humanity itself. War with humanity itself, the World Central Kitchen never would have been coordinating with the Israeli Defense Forces in the first place. In any case, here's Chef Jose Andres, who again is a political radical on the left.
Fascinating admission there. Fascinating admission by Shapiro, where he made abundantly clear that he is aware that the World Central Kitchen was coordinating with the IDF, meaning that the IDF knew exactly where those humanitarian aid workers were, knew exactly how to target them, and in fact did target them, not with 1 drone strike, not with 2 drone strikes, but with 3 separate drone strikes. Remember, that convoy of humanitarian aid trucks included 3 trucks. They first hit the first truck, and then as those people were basically slaughtered through that drone strike, they attacked the second one, and then the third one, ensuring that everyone that was in that convoy was slaughtered. Okay, 7 individuals, 3 of them from the UK, 1 of them a dual US Canadian citizen. You had a Polish individual included as well, and a Palestinian driver, all of them slaughtered, gone. And the IDF claimed, well, we thought, we had a hint that maybe, just maybe, Cenk, there was 1 armed terrorist with them. didn't have any real solid intel, we decided to slaughter all of them anyway. And was there an armed terrorist with them? No.
Nope. Yeah, so let's look at the layers of that. First of all, you should shame any reporter that reports that as an accident. Even the IDF admits it's not an accident. There's a difference between an accident and a mistake. They meant to hit the convoy. They say that their rationale was that there was a Palestinian on board and he was male. So by IDF definition, he's a terrorist. Oops, it turns out he's not a terrorist. But did they intend to hit the convoy? Yes, absolutely. So number one, they're saying, yeah, we'll kill aid workers from across that have come from across the world. We'll murder you guys if we think you're with a Palestinian male. Okay, so that means you've admitted that you're terrorists. Period. You're saying I'm intentionally murdering civilians because I think they're next to a guy I want to hit. So even if they were right that the guy was theoretically a terrorist that the World Central Kitchen didn't know about, you're still saying, yes, I would like to murder these people that are next to you.
But that's not a radical position. Jose Andres, who has lost people close to him, colleagues that he knew in person, okay, personally, he's the radical for speaking out against what happened to those international humanitarian aid workers. But Ben's not a radical. Ben's not a radical considering the high volume of civilians that have been killed in Gaza, something that he doesn't really care much about, still supports Israel's military operations because again, his bias takes precedent, takes priority over human lives as long as it's Israel carrying out the slaughter. Yeah, so who's the radical? I want to know who the radical is.
Yeah, I don't think that's even an open question. I mean, look, but you guys can decide on your own because some of you that have the same biases as Ben does for a lot of different reasons. And so you'll look at that and go, now look, let me do the second layer first and then you guys be the judge. Okay, the second layer was, well, we're not really sure that it's a terrorist. We just know that it's a male Palestinian. And generally speaking, all male Palestinians that the IDF kills in Gaza, they declare posthumously to be terrorists.
Exactly.
That's how they get to the outlandish 13,000 number, which isn't anywhere near rooted in reality.
And that's based on reporting by Haaretz, okay? That's not based on us just guessing. We're not just saying it. This is based on reporting by an Israeli publication called Haaretz, which we'll get to in a moment.
Yeah, so in that case, it turns out, as usual, they were not at all sure that he was a terrorist or a militant or anything. And they decided, what the heck, let's murder everybody on board just in case. Okay, so you guys tell me, what's the radical position? Some of you that are as biased as Ben will say, yeah, no, the radical position is saying not murdering them. Of course you murder them. And then find out later if you got it right or wrong. Who cares? We already murdered 33,000 of them. We're starving 1 million of them. What part of this was unclear, but they had it coming. Hamas is making us starve them. Hamas is making us kill World Central Kitchen workers, etc. Yeah, but the rest of you, I imagine, which is about 98% of the world at this point, goes, no, they're obviously committing acts of terrorism when you murder civilians on purpose. Based on the flimsiest evidence or no evidence, or even if it was one terrorist, you don't care at all that you're killing the other people.
Yeah.
Well, then that means you are a radical who thinks that murder is perfectly fine as long as you're killing Palestinians or anyone within the vicinity of a Palestinian.
See, what Ben doesn't realize is that his side of this argument has gotten far too cocky. And what I mean by that is, look, I get it. At least here in the United States, you have government officials, members of the media who have done a fantastic job. They've really succeeded in dehumanizing the Palestinian people to the point where, I mean, tens of thousands of them will get slaughtered, and there's still a debate about whether the military conduct of the IDF is okay. But once the IDF starts killing international humanitarian aid workers, including an American citizen, suddenly that strategy of dehumanizing people doesn't work. It's not as effective, and people start waking up to the reality on the ground in Gaza. And he's furious about people speaking out, including Jose Andres, who, if I were him, I'm not even him, and I'm furious about what has happened, right? Because I care about human lives. That includes human lives on the Israeli side. We were furious after the atrocities that Hamas committed on October 7th happened. Okay? And I'm furious as we report this story day after day of Palestinian civilians getting slaughtered in Gaza. Let's go to the next video because there's more insanity from Ben Shapiro on this issue.
If it were a war against humanity itself, Israel, as I've said 1,000 times, has complete air superiority over the Gaza Strip. They could have just killed literally hundreds of thousands of people. Even according to Hamas statistics, which are largely falsified, Israel has killed somewhere in the neighborhood of 32,000 people. According to Israeli statistics, that includes at least 13,000 terrorists. And one of the things about being a terrorist in the Gaza Strip is that many of the people who are considered non-terrorists are 18-year-old men who put down a gun for 5 minutes, and now they're non-terrorists, and then they pick up the gun, and now they're terrorists again. What happened with the World Central Kitchen is indeed a tragedy. Israel has not only acknowledged that, Israel has fired the officers who were in charge, despite the confusion about what actually happened. By the way, the Jerusalem Post did have a report about what actually happened with the World Central Kitchen. It turns out that war zones are really dangerous, and you don't have perfect knowledge of what's going on at any given time.
No, the IDF didn't have perfect knowledge, even though the World Central Kitchen was coordinating with the IDF to ensure that the IDF knew exactly where they were, even though they were in an area, they were traveling in an area that was supposed to be safe. But we're gonna pretend like the IDF had no idea. They were confused, they weren't confused. They have even admitted that this was intentional, okay? Again, one drone strike, maybe Ben could get away with his fiction, right? With his lies here. 2 drone strikes, 3 drone strikes, how are you gonna still sit there and spout these lies and think you can get away with it? And by the way, Ben, I mean, I would urge you to update your numbers because he noted that 13,000 Hamas militants were killed, right? Except that's not what the IDF is saying. Let's go to the first graphic here. This is according to reporting by an Israeli publication, Haaretz. The Israeli army says 9,000 terrorists have been killed since the Gaza war began. Defense officials and soldiers, however, tell Haaretz that these are often civilians whose only crime was to cross an invisible line drawn by the IDF. So tell me, Shapiro, whose numbers are fictitious here? Let me keep going. In every combat zone, commanders define such kill zones. Says a reserve officer that Haaretz spoke to. This means clear red lines that no one who is not from the IDF may cross so that our forces in the area are not hit. The boundaries of these kill zones are not determined in advance, meaning that Palestinian civilians don't know they exist and they might unwittingly walk into a so-called kill zone or combat zone and they get killed immediately. As soon as people enter it, this reserve officer said, mainly adult males, orders are to shoot and kill even if that person is unarmed, says the reserve officer. One more graphic for you. In practice, a terrorist is anyone the IDF has killed in the areas in which its forces operate, says a reserve officer who has served in Gaza. So the number that Shapiro provided, the 13,000 Hamas militants who have been killed, was already inflated, okay, according to the IDF itself. And then even that 9,000 figure is inflated by the IDF because they just label any adult male they kill as a Hamas militant.
Yeah, so there's some numbers that are inescapable. So 33,000 are dead, confirmed by the Associated Press and every other news organization. 23,000 of them are women and children. That's why you notice Ben Shapiro saying there, are kids really kids? I mean, how do we know if they didn't pick up a gun at some point in their lives? By the way, if you use that standard in America, what would happen then? You saw Lauren Boebert and several other Republican congressmen do photo shoots during Christmas with all their kids carrying AR-15s. According to the Shapiro standard, they should have all been murdered by the IDF because if you pick up a gun when you're a kid, at any point, you're a terrorist, okay? So now, of course, that's not true. And he made up that they have guns. There's very little guns in Gaza. And so, basically, it's all a way of saying, yeah, we murdered a lot of kids, but so are they really kids if they're Palestinians? Now, whenever this stuff happens, I want you to always think in both sides. Flip it and see if you're comfortable with it. So if Hamas had killed 33,000 Israelis already, I mean, look at the damage that's been done after 1,200 were killed. Imagine if they killed 33,000 Israelis and they would not stop and they kept killing and killing. And 23,000 of those were women and children. And then the Hamas said, yeah, but so what? I bet those kids were guilty at some point. Everyone would say that's the most outrageous, horrible, terrorist statement I've ever heard.
We'd have troops on the ground by now.
Yeah, we would.
The US would have troops on the ground fighting Hamas as we speak. That is what would happen.
Yeah, so more on the numbers real quick. 13,000, then IDF says, yeah, just kidding, 9,000. Oh, okay, so you were lying about the 13,000, and that's not stopped Ben Shapiro and almost every other right-wing media outlet from continuing to lie of 13,000, even though the IDF admits they were lying. And then you add in the kill zones that Anna talked about. And by the way, you've already seen what a kill zone looks like. That's why they killed their own hostages, the 3 hostages that had no shirt and the white flag.
Israelis.
They're Israeli hostages because they were in a kill zone. So the order in a kill zone is murder everyone in the zone and then later call them terrorists. I don't know if those 3 Israeli hostages are part of the 9,000 count because they were killed in a kill zone. So I guess by IDF definition, those Israeli hostages were terrorists. Okay, so this is insanity and totally indefensible. The one tiny thing about Jose Andres that Shapiro said in the whole long segment that I agreed with was he said he has a lot of power in Washington. That's true. He has the top restaurants in Washington and the people in DC are unbearable and they care about things like that. But is it true that Jose Andres, because of his restaurants, is flipping all of Washington? Of course not. That's insanity. The whole world is saying, are you guys nuts? And finally, did you notice what he bragged about? Well, if we wanted to murder everyone in Gaza, we could. Oh, so it's not a Holocaust. It's only a genocide. That's gotta be the lowest bar in history. Well, we didn't do a Holocaust against them. We didn't try to murder every single Palestinian in the world. We just did a genocide where we killed tons of Palestinians based on the fact that they were Palestinians, and we did ethnic cleansing, and we destroyed where they live. And so you should give us credit for only doing a genocide. Yeah, no deal.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that Israel didn't want to lose its moral high ground immediately. They would prefer to do it slowly, torturously, painfully, and they're getting there. I mean, they've been there already for people who've been paying close attention to how the IDF has carried out this war. But the international community and an increasing percentage of Americans are waking up to what's happening. And Ben doesn't know how to spin the story anymore, despite the fact that most people know the facts about what happened in those 3 drone strikes that killed 7 humanitarian aid workers.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.